free for residents, fellows, and medical students. Here is the information. If you have questions about this, you can email Alyssa, and she will send this to you regarding negotiations.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Bederson needs no introduction to this group, but this presentation will stand alone in the future on YouTube, so I introduce him to an unknown future audience. Dr. Joshua Bederson is the Leonard Mallis and Corinne Joseph Graber Professor and System Chair of Mount Sinai Health System's Department of Neurosurgery. He's a skull-based and cerebrovascular neurosurgeon and is a leader in developing advanced intraoperative applications of digital visualization technologies. He's led the Mount Sinai Neurosurgery Department to become one of the fastest growing and increasingly respected neurosurgery programs in the nation. He serves as co-director of the Skull Base Surgery Center and Pituitary Care and Research Center, and has performed more than 4,000 neurosurgical operations at Mount Sinai. Dr. Bederson is also a leader and innovator in neurosurgical technology development, leading the development of Mount Sinai's Neurosurgery Simulation Core, AI Sinai, and the topic of today's discussion, Sinai BioDesign. Sinai BioDesign is a highly innovative group that works with clinicians and scientists to help them develop and realize their ideas for medical devices, from concept to patent, prototype, and even company development. I think this is one of the most exciting things happening in neurosurgery and even academia today. Thank you, Dr. Bederson.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to share my screen. Sorry about the delay here. And you should just see about all of it now.
That's perfect.
Great, thank you. Good, well, today's talk is going to be focused on Sinai BioDesign, a project that is designed to translate our domain expertise into commercially relevant innovations. My disclosures, I have financial relationships with Brain Lab, Surgical Theater, Zeiss, and Neurotechnologies investors, which include companies like Synchron. But I want to say from the start that I have no financial role or gain from anything related to Sinai BioDesign whatsoever, nor are there any plans for that to happen in the future. It's been a real ride working at Mount Sinai, which has changed over the years. It's an amazing place, as you know, and with 42,000 employees, Mount Sinai is New York's largest private employer, so it's a big institution. I'm the 8th chair. It's an old department for neurosurgery standards since 1914. And as many of you know, we are now entering our 75th year of the residency program. The faculty has grown, and as you can see, we have a large and diverse faculty of very, very talented individuals, as well as a growing and incredible faculty of advanced practice providers. We're up to more than 50 faculty. We have more than 25 trainees, a couple of hundred neurosurgery staff. We're performing 6,000 operations each year in 20 operating rooms every single day. And the department is improving, at least as far as our ranking and our appreciation by peers. And here you see the US News and World Report, hopefully pointing us towards top 10 in the future. But equally important is what we're doing in research. And although ranking is not everything, I certainly do look at it. These are the Blue Ridge ranks for federal funding in research. And as you can see, we have now reached #1 in New York State. We still have a way to go nationwide, but I have no doubt that with current efforts of our scientists, this will continue to improve. Neurosurgery is a very diverse field. Cerebrovascular disease, skull base, primary and malignant brain tumors, deep brain stimulation for movement disorders and psychiatric disease, pituitary neuroendocrine, epilepsy, spine, pediatrics, trauma, neurocritical care. Each one of these is as different from the others as geriatrics is from GYN. But one of our most important services is the fact that we have access to the brain that allows us to facilitate science and discovery. And in research, I think many of you are familiar with some of our most successful programs linking brain access to science. Here you see Brian Capel and Alex Charney's Living Brain Project, designed to relate human subjects as neuroscience tools. This is a very exciting project that has led to new grants for both departments and new discoveries. Likewise, SEACT with Helen Mayberg is a prime example of how brain access promotes science and science promotes discovery. SADI, TED, responsive neurostimulation leading to discovery. And probably best exemplified by the vascular program. As you heard Tom mention, one of the reasons he's here is the vascular program led by Jay Mako, professor and senior system vice chair. Jay is a world leader in several different realms. He's a publishing powerhouse. And one of the many things in his background is his time at Buffalo, where the Jacobs Institute is. And that is a medical innovation center that has developed under Nick Hopkins over the years. Jay's motto is that care improves research, improves care. And he has used the access to the brain to develop his role as a clinical trials expert internationally, not just in the number of cases and number of clinical trials we're enrolled in, but also in our role in those trials as often the number one enroller in the trials that he participates in. This, together with our other researchers, has led to a very busy clinical trials office in neurosurgery with 25 full-time employees right now. And this has also led to major revenues coming in from industry. Much of the finances coming into the research infrastructure have been through industry. And this is reflected in a paper recently published showing that the neurosurgery department currently ranks number 4 in the United States in industry payments related to research. And if you look at the other places, one is spine, one is tumor, and the only other one that is vascular is Barrow. So really, we're number 2 in the country relating to vascular neurosurgery. So clearly, this program of ours that focuses on discovery and research is important. But what about commercialization? And that's where Sinai BioDesign comes in, which I view this program as Mount Sinai's main center for medtech innovation. As opposed to research, this is a medtech device-focused program whose goal ultimately will be to generate commercial assets for the Department of Mount Sinai with an embedded innovation program. And I wanted to give you a little background on how we came into being and where we're going to go. I started out as a supposed academic neurosurgeon. I joined Mount Sinai in 1992. It took me 10 years to get my first R01 as PI and was the first neurosurgeon to do that at Mount Sinai. But that was a long slog, starting with an American Heart Association grant, an R29, which was the equivalent of today's R21, but lasted 5 years, and then finally the R01. As my vascular program and skull-based clinical program grew, I became more interested in 3D modeling for preoperative planning. And in about 2008, we began a program called the Simulation Program. We developed collaborations with the Canadian Research Council, and in 2013 recruited Anthony Costa, actually Pat Kovac recruited Anthony into the scientific computing world, but Anthony and I rapidly became collaborators and friends. And we were fortunate enough that he moved into the department full-time in 2015. At the time, we called ourselves the Neurosurgery SimCorps, and our mission was basically to bring simulation into the general workflow of neurosurgery every single day. And this is an example. Some of you have seen this example, but I like it. It's very illustrative. This was a 71-year-old man presenting with ataxia. This was the tumor meningioma of his ventral cervical medullary junction, and this is what the simulation shows. The classic workflow is that we will simulate and plan the case, and here you see how we focus on tumor, blood vessel, and brain as a first pass. And then we can overlay soft tissues obtained from a co-registered MRI scan to finalize our plan for surgery. So this is a fairly classic planning scenario. Over time, this became almost routine. And we have now defined what I think is the field's standard, defining preparation, planning, and practice of the AR/VR heads-up display workflow in neurosurgery. And we have published this, we have demonstrated this throughout the world. It's interesting to note that Anthony's expertise is in segmentation, automated segmentation, so that the computers basically can figure out what's important and select the most important areas of the image to model. So that was that case. This is a current case. So that was 5 years ago, the case I just showed you. This is a case from a couple of weeks ago. And those of you who are on the Blue service will remember this patient also presenting the same way. And here's what the simulations currently look like. Again, this one focuses on soft tissue and tumor, and then we can overlay bone and blood vessel. And what this demonstrates is that it's likely to be a challenging case because the vertebral basilar junction is displaced superiorly by this tumor, and the brainstem is draped over the back of it. At surgery, and this is from the case just a couple of weeks ago, you see the brainstem dorsally displaced, the tumor peeking out, and our window between branches of the nerves and blood vessels is very narrow. It's very helpful, I think, to know with this heads-up display how far lateral this tumor goes to the vertebral artery, but also how far we have to reach in order for us to get to the VB junction, which after a little bit of training, you begin to be able to interpret these heads-up display images. Over time, we realized that heads-up display, AR and VR, are useful and applicable in many different parts of the patient engagement profile, from initial consultation and planning, setup, patient positioning, and so on and so forth. Not unimportantly, it's become extremely useful in our consultations with patients and families that they will understand better what it is we need to do. One of the things that became obvious early on is that our needs in the operating room are industry drivers. And the reason I knew this is that before long, without really trying, I had the leaders of certain key industries in my operating room and develop relationships with all of these people, many of whom I now call friends. Stefan Vilsmeyer, Modi Avasar, Lon Gary, Dirk Bruner, Cameron Piron, and Jay Mako's relationship with Tim Scannell also brought him into the fold to a certain extent. And these relationships allow us to iteratively help them develop their technologies to meet our needs. So getting back to what Anthony was doing, he was working on automated segmentation. And early on, he and his student, Suleiman Samani, and Doug Eunice, an orthopedic surgeon, realized that if they could automatically segment a diseased hip and have our modeling center called the Rapid Prototyping Center 3D print an implant, they might be able to form a company, which they did.
There's a kind of inherent problem with some of the implants. They're really one size fits none. They aren't really designed to fit any one particular patient.
Monogram Orthopedics is a medical technology company in the orthopedic space. And what we're developing is a next generation 3D printed implant that is optimized for press fit fixation and insertion with a state-of-the-art orthopedic robot.
So this was our first company out of Sinai BioDesign. It's now valued at about 75 million and has returned over $4 million in equity to Mount Sinai on a Series A valuation. So if we can influence industry and create companies, can we also develop our own devices? And that really was the question. Around that time, the Rapid Prototyping Center became available, and after a pitch to Dr. Charney, he gave it to us. We worked with Scott Friedman and Joel Dudley to transition entirely to neurosurgery, the Rapid Prototyping Center. And as Tom Oxley in his talk just before mentioned, early funding was key, and there was no other place for that funding other than neurosurgery. And so I told the dean that I wanted to invest in this concept of a device innovation center, and he said yes. It was money generated from neurosurgery, but I also needed his buy-in and his permission, and we got that. And so over the past several years, we've invested heavily in this program. However, the first step was to prototype the process of developing a faculty-facing needs-based innovation program, and I had to pick a problem to address. And so the one that I was interested in is the concept that a deep electrode, such as one that you would use in SEEG, although it provides very valuable information, loses information that is generated on the cortical surface. However, a cortical surface electrode, at least an array, up until recently required a large opening. And you can see that both Tom's company and this concept are, again, going after something similar. The information, electrical information available on the cortical surface. So I went back to my own drawing board and in 2016 made some drawings about an idea for a device that would allow us to drill a slanted burr hole and ultimately allow us to insert a subdural electrode at the bedside. And you can see the 2016 timeline here. And this is the burr hole that I had hoped our device would eventually create. We took it to an artist and we called it the minimally invasive cranial access device. And then I had to prototype the device. So I went to my home studio and Home Depot and threw this together, which I still have kicking around my office somewhere. And this is the initial crude prototype. We then brought that down to Sinai BioDesign and the prototyping center, converted the drawings to CAD, and then in the RPC, created a 3D print that then holds the Midas Rex drill. The next phase was to collaborate with Mount Sinai Innovation Partners to do a search of the patents out there, and we found that really there was nothing out there. We also did a market assessment with MSIP, the preparation for the patent and the filing of the patent. So what is MSIP? For those of you who don't know, Mount Sinai Innovation Partners is run by Eric Liam. There's an extensive staff. And this is, in other places, this might be called the MedTech Center for Mount Sinai. It's been extremely valuable to develop this relationship. We have a coordinated strategy, particularly now that Phil Williams has joined us, in which we discuss our strategy for commercialization very early in the process of developing new ideas. And we iterate back and forth with their support each step of the way. One of the most important parts of Mount Sinai BioDesign is the embedding of SBD in our operating rooms. And here you see the Sinai BioDesign on the 8th floor, adjacent to our ORs, and down on the MC level, so that we are really, truly co-located with the surgeons doing our activities. We have a structured, fairly routine process. We identify the need, which is really the problem that each surgeon faces every single day. How many times are you in the operating room thinking, if only I had an instrument that could turn left or right or give me a different view? So you have problems that you face every day that need a technical solution. The idea is that we bring these problems to Sinai BioDesign, and it's the Sinai BioDesign engineers that work with surgeons to identify potential solutions, which are then modeled and prototyped within BioDesign. And since we're co-located, we provide immediate feedback to the surgeon and then move on to translational development while iterating with MSIP. The idea is to generate commercial assets, whether through grants, licensing, or startup companies. And we're making progress. We currently have 15 active projects, and here you see our portfolio right now. And I'll describe some of these. You can see the various phases of discovery, commercialization, development, and what the commercial approach is, whether through a grant, a startup, or a license. And you can see where we stand on each one of these. I want to give you a couple of examples. Since 2018, though, we've had 75 faculty engagements, 17 patents, 26 tech disclosures. We've got one startup that's developing. We've got 3 grants applied for and 1 success, commercial success so far. These are our top 5 programs right now: Chill, DBC, valve, the pharynx, aspirator, and mitral print. Chill is an intracranial cooling catheter, and this project's physician lead is Chris Kellner. As you know, Chris was recruited in part to develop our program for intracerebral hemorrhage management. And he has developed a technique and technology that both evacuates and can cool the catheter to reduce the perilesional brain damage. Cooling is a proven protection strategy both in heart and in brain, although cooling the brain has become extremely difficult. And this is a device designed to cool a portion of the brain around an intracerebral hemorrhage cavity whose hemorrhage has been evacuated. This concept has been vetted through deployment in each phase of the process: surgiscope removal, tunneling, attachment, cooling, placing. The fact that we can generate models in the basement, potentially deploy them in the operating room, or test them on the 26th floor is a huge advantage of having Sinai BioDesign in one building together with neurosurgery. And where we stand right now is that the patents have been obtained. We've got a large animal trial in preparation. The grant was submitted. And you see that this is a very well thought out process with the team up there. This is what was described to the NIH. And what you see here is our plan for 5 years that ultimately hopes to spin out a company. And this is what we describe to the NIH. DBC, the detachable balloon catheter, originates with Alejandro. Also, we've have the patents up and running. And here we are actually hoping to form a company around this. We are in active negotiations to recruit a CEO for that company. This is what the device looks like, and its goal is to be the first neuro-detachable balloon catheter in this space. The next generation valve project is one that Tom is leading, and this is designed to solve the problem of needing two hands to detach, blood loss, and complications related to detachment of the valve. And likewise, we're pretty far along. This one actually may go fastest of all of them. Lumen is another one of Chris's. This is one of the most interesting ones, I think. And the concept is for near-infrared light in the treatment of neurodegenerative and other brain disorders, as well as to form a company. We don't just limit ourselves to neurosurgery, although that is clearly our focus. We would like to work with other departments, and we're doing this with cardiac surgery here with the mitral print designed to sense pressures, closing pressures in the mitral valve, as well as working with ENT on the pharynx aspirator. And this is a project of J. Marks, who's really integrated nicely with the program. This is also rapidly going, and we're currently speaking with several different companies about a licensing or royalty agreement for this project. So I think that we've gone from prototyping to demonstrating we can partner with physician creators. And here you see some quotes from our physician creators. And we do more than that. We also are transforming students into leaders. The MO of this whole project is that we're going to take students, assign them to projects. They will learn the process as they develop those projects. And ultimately, they will graduate as CEO of a company around that project. And this is something that's taken primarily from Stanford BioDesign. And here you can see some of our students. And Turner Baker is actually one of our main faculty and leaders in Sinai BioDesign. So where are we going from here? The most important thing is that we intend and need to expand our team. It's a relatively small team right now with way too many projects and far too much work that can be done by such a small team. We're going to expand the design fellowship, enlarge the resource pipeline. We hope to integrate AI Sinai, a separate arm of Sinai BioDesign, into the program. We're going to work on community outreach and enhancing the visibility of Sinai BioDesign. So how do we expand when we're losing key faculty? And many of you know by now that Anthony Costa left Mount Sinai. He was recruited by NVIDIA to lead their AI-driven healthcare strategy. It's a testament to Anthony's talent that he was recruited, but also of the Sinai BioDesign concept that he was able to grow as a leader of Sinai BioDesign. And I think it's nothing but a great success. We remain really close with Anthony and hope to continue our collaborations with him as time passes. This is the Sinai BioDesign team right now. It's led by Ben Rappaport and Tom Oxley, whose outstanding presentation you just heard. I hope that he stays available enough to be a vital member of Sinai BioDesign over time. Phil Williams has been a welcome addition and an essential addition, directing our business development as a member of MSIP. Turner Baker and Alexis are very strong members, and then other members of the neurosurgery department, students who are critical to Sinai BioDesign. And here you see people who have passed in and out of Sinai BioDesign, but who remain extremely important. Ben Rappaport is the new director. Those of you who know him already know that he got his PhD in electrical engineering from MIT, his medical degree from Harvard, and he's completed fellowships in endovascular as well as endoscopic skull-based surgery. He really packs a punch. He's a med tech entrepreneur. He's a great leader. He's a scientist, and he's a marathon runner with multiple sub 3-hour marathons. So there's your resilience right there. I think Ben has everything that he will need to take Sinai BioDesign to the next level, and really welcome him. And I mentioned how valuable Tom has been in giving us his perspectives that he has gained from forming Synchron. Turner Baker and Alexi are incredibly important members. They're both project managers, basically overseeing the full process, but they have way too much on their plate. And so our plans are to expand our fellowship, to leverage our network throughout New York. And we have partnerships with many different programs. We're going to be bringing in tech companies from around the world to get first looks at some of our technology and give them an option to participate. We have already developed more of our modeling program. Initially, we were doing courses at places like AANS, and we needed 3D printed skulls and brains. And so we did our own, and we then realized that this is actually a commercially valuable product, which we are now making. We call it Brain Case, and it is both the shell and the soft brain that can be used for simulation and modeling. And you can see we're using it here for SEEG, and we hope to use it for ICH and other disease processes. We're going to be working on social media and communications, and partnering with the Department of Education. We see potential for collaborations with the Biomedical Engineering Institute. Zahi and Preeti have offered to partner with us, and we see numerous opportunities there. So this brings us back to where I started. None of this is useful unless it can help us with the technologies and techniques. And going from these devices I showed you to the ability to remove this tumor, and here you see the final result with the vertebral basilar junction, as well as the origin of the anterior spinal artery and the desired outcome with the patient. That's still a long way off. And the whole goal of this is to generate devices that make money for the department, but also solve relevant problems for our patients. I started by saying that Dr. Charney had supported us in the beginning, and he continues to support. He's seen what we have done and is committed additional support to further this process. So I am sure that the future of Sinai BioDesign is bright, but as Tom said, and I learned so much from his lecture, I'm not sure how you put it, but a continued sense of urgency. I'll have to get the quote better from you, Tom. And that's really where we are now, is to maintain our momentum and to actually accelerate with new students, a prototyping fund, and to get additional space. So I hope that I have given you a sense of how brain access for science and discovery is what drives this one of our service lines in Sinai BioDesign. It's certainly exciting to be part of this, and I hope that in the next 5 years I can give you even better follow-up as to how far we've come and what we've done. So I think I'll stop there and take any questions if you have any. I finished a little earlier than planned, but let's see, are there any questions in the audience?
I do see some questions. Hold on, I'm activating some questions here.
I think I'll just make a quick comment, Dr. Bederson, that I think what's really, and Ben has spoken about this as well, that we really think there's an opportunity to grow the medical device community in New York City. And, you know, Control Labs recently sold to Facebook. There's this sort of resurgence of tech and hopefully now med tech as well that's happening in New York City right now. And we've taken lessons from how Stanford were very successful with their program, and Ben's got some ideas on how to bring that through in New York. But, you know, your support over the next few years and then growing out in the New York City infrastructure means that everything's in place for this to be hugely successful. And I think it's really exciting where it could go.
Yeah, I hope so. Ben, do you want to comment a little bit on what you see as the future of Sinai BioDesign?
Absolutely. Tremendously exciting time for Sinai BioDesign and Mount Sinai Neurosurgery, and I'm thrilled to be joining the team in this capacity. So thank you. And it's great working with Tom and with the other members of the group. And I would just say that some of the key factors to success in the past and present and future are our ability to engage with all of you and other colleagues at Mount Sinai with with promising ideas, and with students and others in the New York City area. And really, if you have ideas or want to think about even engaging, Sinai BioDesign has a lot of resources and talent to make ideas reality over time. So really, I welcome those conversations over time, and please be in touch. This is a really exciting time.
A question from the audience. Sorry, Tom, you had something?
I just wanted to tell everyone that I was watching what I think was one of the most exciting times for BioDesign was when, and J Mark's probably not here, but it's an ENT physician who was working with, I think it was Alexi and Anthony, and it was during COVID, and there was a meeting that happened in BioDesign. They just came through, they spent about 10 minutes. They talked about this issue of viral particles during intubation and came up with this very quick and simple idea of this aspirated device, which was one of the comments. And then Alexi was there and suddenly grabbed the idea from the physician and then turned it into an idea and kept the momentum going. And I think that's the beauty of it. If anyone's got concepts or ideas, swing past, have a quick conversation. And it's an infrastructure to carry on your ideas because physicians are too busy to carry them forward. And so that's the interaction that worked. And I just thought that example was just, everything perfectly coming together.
I think that's really important, which is that, as surgeons, we're natural innovators. I mean, Dr. Bederson mentioned this during the presentation. How many times do you hear yourself or a colleague say, I wish I had this or that device or capability? It happens all the time. And we live basically within the department, and we have rapid prototyping capabilities and very talented engineers. And we already have a track record of prototyping and putting out devices that actually work. So this is a way of sharing your ideas in a very exciting way, working with people who have the ability and proven track record of making prototypes and actual working devices. So please come, share your ideas, and I think you'll feel the excitement as you sort of make a concept that you've been thinking about into something that is testable in a prototype, and closer and closer to a real workable device.
One of the things I wanted to say was that although members of the team are not here to make money off of these devices, if you bring an idea, inventors actually can and do retain all of the rights that any inventor would developing an idea through Mount Sinai. And there are revenue streams that come back when eventually when and if these things do become successful. Another question that came was that in the context of limited resources, with so many different projects, how do we prioritize these projects, and what is the process that we use? Ben, do you want to just talk about what the process is for prioritizing?
So thank you, Ben. Before you answer, I asked that question, and I wanted to congratulate the team for this incredible enterprise that you have together. And I do understand that it's important to come up with ideas and to test as much as possible. I also want to take the exact opposite perspective. And in our world, resources are limited. So maybe talking a little bit about how to prioritize and what are the strategies that revolves around that. Thank you.
Sure, thanks for the context. The group is called BioDesign for a reason, and that is that over the last 20 years, this concept of biodesign, which was really pioneered at Stanford, has been developed as a pretty disciplined biomedical engineering procedure, and it's actually been codified now. It's a textbook in its 3rd edition called BioDesign that came out of Stanford's BioDesign program. And the process begins with evaluating a new idea, ideation, understanding what the market needs are, and really staying true to clinical needs. It's maybe a subject for a slightly longer discussion, but we really try to deeply understand what the clinical needs are, what the market needs are, what is feasible, and then through that to find the means to make ideas that meet those thresholds of feasibility and clinical need into a reality. We tend not to shut down projects because of lack of means. When there is a project that meets the need, that meets the threshold of sort of medical necessity, urgency, feasibility, market need, and so on, the imperative within the group is to bring those projects forward. And we have found ways through grant funding, philanthropy, industry support, and so on. So it's limited only somewhat by personnel and funding, and we hope certainly to grow those aspects as more great ideas and concepts come into the group. And you saw already, I would say that at this time we have about 6 or 7 very mature projects within the group, and we're actively working to expand the capabilities of the group to meet those as the number of great projects rises. So I just want to emphasize, we're not here to shut down projects. We're here to make the good ones possible.
Thank you,
I have
Ben.
a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Tanvir.
First of all, those are 2 very inspiring presentations, and it's an incredible opportunity we have to have biodesign in the department. And I think many of us have ideas and may have not taken full advantage, and I think it's very inspirational. My question had to do, Tom had a question about sort of the intersection between being involved in industry and academics, and he sort of answered it from how being involved in clinical things, and that the clinical thing could help perhaps his business side. I'm wondering about the reverse. To any of the people, either Dr. Bederson, Oxley, or Rappaport, how does involvement in industry, in the potential for payment or conflict of interest, affect the academics and your ability to publish, present, and maintain your academic profile?
I'll take a stab at this. It definitely does. And there has to be a management program for each project that you undertake. It has to be listed, it has to be declared. And when you have a relationship with a company, let's say, or an industry, you cannot really be involved in the research or data analysis of that project. So it definitely has an impact. However, over the past several years, I believe that Sinai has become a little more open to working with us on these management plans. I mean, sometimes they look at what we're doing and challenge, but when we explain what the relationship is and how we've managed it, they've been fairly understanding. But you can't, if you have, for example, with BrainLab, I would love to be able to do a study in which I'm, lead investigator on some of this heads-up display and so on and so forth. But since they are funding some of the work, can't do it. Just can't do it. So it has an impact. Does anyone else want to comment? Tom, do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking through the experience I've had with peer review in high impact journals. I think when the disclosures have to be upfront, but I think there are examples where companies have still published in high impact journals because the data has stood up on its own 2 feet. But I think the level of rigor that the peer reviewers put you under when you have those disclosures is significantly higher than if you did not. But Google, I'm thinking of Google Brain, I think DeepMind, there's been a bunch of really impressive pieces published by companies. So I think it's possible. I think from an academic point of view, the disclosures have to be upfront, and then you're held to the torch more than you might otherwise be. Although I think as we've gone on, I've noticed this increasingly I think the ability to do this continually reduces. So I think if you're taking the decision to pursue a commercial activity, your ability to focus and be a pure academic diminishes over time. And I've noticed that happening.
Maybe I could add one thing to that, because I think this is a really important topic. And there's sort of 2 questions here. One is, how do we maintain the ethics of the scientific process around what happens when a device is either motivated by or used to treat patients, but there's also commercial interest involved. And I think there's sort of a corollary question, which is when you have physician innovators or academic innovators who want to make their ideas a reality, how do we respect their intellectual contribution in a financial way as that concept becomes a reality? And both of those are the subject of a lot of discussion over time. But I think here at Mount Sinai and in BioDesign and in our surgery department, we have a lot of people, many of whom are on the call today, who've been able to successfully navigate that. And we're definitely committed to doing it. I think Tom raises a great point, which is that increasingly there's a trend within industry, in the tech industry, to publish results in a peer-reviewed way. I think that's definitely the case in the artificial intelligence community, and certainly in the BioDesign group, we're committed to navigating that path of a kind of ethical approach to all of these issues, and I think that you'll find that in your interactions with us.
Thanks, Tanvir. Hey, Tom, there was another question from the audience on yours. What operating system are you going to use? Are you Mac or PC? And if you are Mac, can you get a PC-driven device or vice versa?
Yeah,
this is being recorded for YouTube, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is a critical question that we're looking at currently. I would say the framework with which we're going to make that decision is around FDA. And the challenge with FDA is that everything needs to be locked down. So it probably is the case that we're going to choose an operating system to start with. Our goal is to achieve what Cochlear have achieved, and that is to draw a line with where the class 3 implantable becomes a class 2. And then when you're dealing with a class 2 component of your device, you can make iterations more quickly. Very hard to do that with a class 3. Cochlear recently achieved this and this was only about a year ago, they achieved this where the Bluetooth left the Cochlear. They considered that, they got that regulated as a class 2, and they had their first patient, their Cochlear connected directly into the iPhone. So, and the first patient to then speak to their wife could hear the voice very clearly through the iPhone, didn't need to touch the phone. I think it's an example of where these prostheses are headed. But FDA, this is new for FDA, and so finding a way that we can iterate through software updates in a way that FDA finds acceptable is a major challenge for the entire industry moving forward, and we're facing that now. But I can't tell you which operating system we're going to use just yet.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? If not, I think we can end today's session. Okay, thanks everyone. Happy to talk offline. Thanks, Tom.